Good evening. This April the 1st, 2025 Board of Aldermen meeting is hereby called to order. I'd like to ask Alderwoman Pat Hamilton to lead us in an invocation, and I'll lead in the pledge. If you will, please stand.
Please join me in prayer. Dear Father in heaven, we thank you for this beautiful day that we've all enjoyed. And dear Father, we especially thank you today for the opportunity that we have had to go to the polls and vote. And dear Lord, as I watch people walk in and make their votes and come back out, dear Lord, it made me so thankful that we do have the freedom to do that. And dear God, we thank you for the freedom that we have to meet here tonight and the freedom that we have to worship and go to our churches. And dear God, we just give you the honor and the glory and the praise for these freedoms that we enjoy. And dear Lord, now we ask you to take us into the business part of our meeting. Give us the wisdom and guidance we need. Guide our mayor as he leads us. This we ask in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Ms. Stout, would you conduct roll call?
Aldridge.
Here.
Collins.
Here.
Dickerson.
Here.
Earhart.
Here.
Hamilton.
Here.
Henderson.
Here.
Wallace.
Here.
Thank you, all present. So obviously a quorum is established. Board, you have before you the packet, or excuse me, the minutes from our March 18th, 2025 regular meeting. Ask if you have any questions on those minutes. If not, any motions for approval as is.
Make a motion to approve.
Mr. Earhart, motion to approve. Is there a second? Second, Mr. Dickerson. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Mayor's updates. You have the packet before you. I promise I'm not going to read all 6 pages to you, but I do want to hit a couple of highlights for the board. I think it's definitely noteworthy. Press release, matter of fact, not in those items, was one that came through this afternoon. A press release from the Mississippi Developmental Authority was released midday, and we were named as one of Mississippi's 13th certified retirement communities under the Mississippi Welcome Home program. So quite an honor, and you'll be seeing more about that. But the MDA Executive Director, Bill Cork, stated that Olive Branch offers top quality amenities and convenient access to world-class cultural opportunities and offer affordable cost of living retirees more money to get out and enjoy these things so much more. We congratulate Olive Branch on this distinction and thank local leadership for taking the steps necessary to become officially certified through the Welcome Home Mississippi program. That's one of 13 out of 300 cities in the state, so quite an honor, and thank you to the board for supporting that and staff that showed the items around to the MDA group that came in and visited with us. On month-end report, in general, obviously this is election day, so polls will close at 7 o'clock, and we'll get those results as soon as possible. I included in your packet MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization list of projects, street projects rather, that should be as one of your handouts, hopefully, in that attachment that shows the streets, mainly Pleasant Hill. I think that's around $12 million, and it shows the streets that are on the list for DeSoto County and local areas. So we're pleased to get that, and you'll see some lesser dollars a little bit further down. So you'll be hearing more about the Pleasant Hill widening as time goes along. Airport-wise, takeoff and landings are at 20,300 so far this calendar year in 2025, so a lot of activity there. From a communications standpoint, our communications group attended MML Youth Leadership Summit in Hattiesburg during the month of March. We had our Mardi Gras parade during the month of March, hosted the farmers market meeting for past vendors who plan to sell homegrown products at City Hall parking lot. And also we met with Olive Branch High School Interact Club regarding the I Love Rye Heart Olive Branch video series that will be forthcoming. The Interact group is going to go and visit places of high volume, whether it's churches or stores or restaurants, and ask people what they love about Olive Branch and bring that to us for some video release. We've got a lot of great things going on, and we're blessed as a city, and sometimes forget those things. We get caught up in all the negatives and things we have to work on. So this is a campaign with those Interact students to help show people the positive things going on in Olive Branch, and hopefully get them involved in some of those positive things is what we're looking at those folks doing. So they'll have identification, they'll have an I Love Olive Branch t-shirt, the Interact students, 11th to 12th graders, and be visiting in groups our big box stores and some of our restaurants, getting feedback from citizens. So should be a positive program. Special projects, we initiated the Swat the Litter Bug public service announcement on social media. More to come about litter. It goes down every week, has to come up every week, so that's an ongoing challenge. Spring newsletter's been submitted to our residents. Social media site, just a couple of facts of interest, or at least one. In the last 28 days, Olive Branch Facebook page received, it averaged over 841,000 views. So a lot of folks getting their information that way that we're sending out. Engineering department, you see the water and sewer projects on page 2 that are still very active. Pleasant Hill widening project. The next big step would be spring of 25, which I guess is pretty much upon us. Then a public hearing will take place, another public hearing on Pleasant Hill widening, and I guess that's from Church to Nail, right, Mr. Swims?
That's going to be from Church to Goodman. The project will go all the way to Goodman for the public hearing.
For the public hearing, and then from that point, we'll look at target dates for project to begin and completion dates and those things. So it's coming. Davidson and State Line Road traffic signalization, definitely needed. Engineers got all the right-of-way acquired and working with MDOT to get the final field review to get that traffic signal up, which was needed yesteryear for sure. Flipping over to page 3, General Services Building Department issued 223 building permits of some type in the month of March. That can be anything from an addition to a home, to a sunroom, to a brand new home, or to a commercial building as well. So positive, a lot of activity there. Human Resources, you see the different interviews that have taken place and things going on from the Human Resources side. IT department has worked with the police department and the vendor, and all of our license plate readers have been upgraded to the current vendor that we use. They finished that project on March the 27th from a public safety standpoint. Parks and Recreation on page 4. We started our spring soccer season. Coaches meetings already taken place for youth baseball and softball, and youth baseball and softball practice has began, so parks are starting to get pretty crowded at this time of year, which is a good thing. The bid's been awarded for the pickleball facility and restroom that we talked about last meeting, so that's in a good place. The disc golf course at what I call the primary park between 305 and Old Goodman is set to be completed in the next week or so. Should be completed definitely in this month, so people can start enjoying that. Senior citizens, you see the events they're having from low attendance of 5 to maybe to 500 people estimated for the craft fair, so a lot going on there. Code enforcement initiated 271 cases in the month of March. Highest number of cases were parking on the grass and oversized or junk or non-operational vehicles are being addressed. 15 new cases were opened under the property maintenance code. Properties not kept up to standards and taking other properties down possibly in value, so 15 were initiated, and 17 cases were heard in the month of March in this courtroom for violations that did not get fixed. Most of the time they get fixed once they get noticed. People generally take care of the problem and end up without going to court, but on some occasions they have to go to court. Page 5's got some of the planning items, and Public Works Gas Department, 27 service lines installed, whether that be for a new residential home or whether it's for a business. That's a pretty active amount. 171 potholes filled in the month of March. The winter wreaked havoc on us during the snow and ice, and potholes are being repaired. There's always one more to get to, but that's a lot of potholes repaired, and 40 street repairs made as well during the month of March. And the finale on page 6, litter pickup just for Public Works was 112 human resource hours, which the math on that averages about $2,000 for the month. and at least another $2,000 spent by Parks and Recs picking up litter. It's $4,000 in 1 week, and so it'd be $208,000 a year picking up litter. That's the reason for the Swat the Litter Bug campaign, and trying to get some community involvement as well on this litter situation that unfortunately every city has, but it seems to keep rearing its head every time we look up. Water and sewer, you've got the list of repairs made. 98 water leaks addressed and resolved. To me, that's an extremely high number, but if you look at the big picture, we have 25,000 points of connection in our water system. 25,000 either meters or points of connection. So if you have a 1% failure rate, you're looking at, what, 250 repairs that need to be made with a 1% failure rate. So that's probably not outlandish with the amount of area that we cover. We'll continue to work those water leaks and get them resolved, but less than 1% is probably faulty at any given time in any city USA, and we just have to stay on top of them the best we can. Safety Department, high visibility clothing is going to be required to take effect April the 7th for anyone working outdoors with tasks and projects just from a safety standpoint. The high vis, bright yellowish, I guess, type attire so they can be seen. Other vehicles can see them, or other people can see them as they're out doing their job just from a safety standpoint. Any questions on those general updates? I did fail to mention that for our audience, this meeting is live streamed on YouTube and also recorded and archived for playback at a later date, just so that you'll be aware of that. Is Miss Tina Hill with us? Miss Hill, come forward. I want to make sure I got it right. So Ms. Hill is with Mid-South Transplant Foundation, and this is a proclamation from the City of Olive Branch, whereas every year, National Donate Life observes Blue and Green Day to amplify the importance of registering as an organ and tissue donor and encourage the public to wear blue and green to raise awareness. Whereas more than 100,000 Americans, including 4,000 in the Mid-South area, are currently on the National Transplant waiting list. Whereas another person is added to the waiting list every 8 minutes, and on average 16 people die every day because the organs they need are not donated in time. Whereas we can all do our part to save lives by educating and encouraging our peers and loved ones to register as an organ and tissue donor. And whereas the City of Olive Branch supports National Donate Life and Mid-South Transplant Foundation and its efforts to bring new life to men and women and children in need of life-saving organ and tissue transplants. And whereas we hold those that have saved lives through the gift of donation in the highest regard and are grateful for their selflessness, now therefore I, Kenneth R. Adams, Mayor of the City of Olive Branch, and the Board of Aldermen do hereby proclaim April the 11th, 2025 as Blue and Green Day in the City of Olive Branch, and encourage all residents to promote the importance of organ and tissue donation. Thank you for partnering with us on this, Ms. Hill, and we sure appreciate your work in the community.
Thank you. I do. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks again, Ms. Hill. And Board, following the agenda, the consent agenda is up at this time. Any questions on items for the consent agenda? One through 24, hearing no questions, any motions? Mr. Wallace, motion to approve. Second, Ms. Henderson, any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Consent agenda passes. Under Planning Commission, new business, this is consideration of an application to address a condition regarding burial of utility lines associated with the board's November the 1st, 2022 preliminary plat approval for Cascades Town Center submitted by Greg Russell of Civil Source on behalf of Marion Threet, Focal Point Investments LLC property owner. The subject property is zoned PUD, planned unit development, and is located within the southeast quadrant of the 178 Highway 305 interchange. Staff report.
Yes, sir, thank you. Again, our subject property that you can see, Highway 78 and 305, and we're in the southeast quadrant of that interchange. The total property size is about 175 acres. The area that's slated for development is the area north of Lick Creek, which runs through here, and the area slated for development you can see has been cleared and filled on this aerial map, and that's about 75 acres plus or minus in size. This property was originally rezoned from the AR zoning district to PUD back in 2019, and at that time there was a preliminary development plan and project text that was adopted at the same time. And then back in 2022, of April 19th of 2022, the board approved a major amendment to those PUD documents that redid the master plan somewhat and didn't really change too much in terms of the project text. So it was later that year, on November 1st of 2022, that the board approved the first phase preliminary plat, and what that preliminary plat included was 10 lots that were either designated for commercial uses along the project perimeter or some mixed-use buildings more inside the project. So when the board approves a preliminary plat, that provides authorization to that developer to submit construction plans for project infrastructure, that being streets and water and sewer lines, over to the city engineer, and then the city engineer in turn reviews those plans and approves those plans, and that allows them to start construction, and that all happened in 2023. And so the work has been underway installing that infrastructure since that time, and so they were about at the point of the project where they, Focal Point, the project developer, contacted North Central Electric Cooperative, who's the electric utility provider, to start designing for the electric facilities and then to eventually install those. And so when North Central came back with the design, they were looking at loop design that's needed when you have transmission lines and you have a multiple phase project or projects that pull a lot of power. Normally those transmission lines are above ground. So when you went back and took a look at our preliminary plat approval from back in 2022, there was a condition in there that specified that, you know, utilities would have to be buried, and unless they were otherwise specified. So that's pretty much what we're doing here tonight, is they're asking you to consider a couple of options that would allow those utilities, or at least some of those utilities, to be above ground. So I'm going to go through the four options that are provided. So this first option is an overhead loop. So when you see these purple squares, or purple circles rather, there's 20 of them, and those represent locations where you would have this overhead utility line that's pictured here. This is a pole, silver pole, and then you can't really see the lines on here, but basically that would be in the 20 spots that you see around the project. And this is the preferred option for Focal Point in North Central, and this is the least expensive option to install. It's fastest and it's most reliable in terms of providing service, or if there's a lightning strike, for North Central to go out and do the needed work to get the power back online very quickly. And one thing I wanted to point out is, even with this option, this is pretty much all you would see overhead. And this is a picture, I think, from Progress Way in the industrial park. So to serve the buildings or the service lines, what happens is you run the power back down the pole, have a transformer on the ground, and then the service line to the buildings underground, and then back up. So all of the service lines would all be buried. And then also in the center of the project, which is kind of your town core or town center, this is kind of the zoning map from your 2022 amendment. And these are building shapes that you see. There's 4 of them And so when you come off of Nail Road Extension, there'd be a roundabout here, and you'd go into kind of this downtown area. And this is an example of what that might look like, or those buildings might look like. This is from Silo Square over in South Haven, where you've got ground level retail and office uses, and then you've got apartments that are stacked over top of that. So I would just want you to note that on this plan, even though we're talking about an overhead transmission line, you would not have anything that would be overhead within that town core or town center area. So again, when we say overhead power, we're really only talking about what you would see here on these poles and then the lines overhead. Now, there are some existing poles that are out there that are shown in these blue circles, and those are an overhead feed that goes back down Fulmer Drive to serve this Fulmer Industries building back in the back. So, you know, the only downsides to this particular option would be, you know, it's considered that overhead electric would generally be undesirable and what you might consider to be an upscale project. And, you know, there's the question as to whether having overhead electric there, even though it would be somewhat limited, would meet the expectations of the board or even the community at large. So there was a second option that was discussed and presented from a meeting that we had a couple weeks back, and this one is a partial burial, and this one would bury the line from that entrance on Nail Road from the roundabout southward down to Fulmer Drive. This area, this building right here is proposed to be a grocery store, so that would have some additional burial. What you see there on these four rectangles, blue rectangles, are basically what the utility boxes would be along that particular road. So this really wouldn't be much additional expense or time delay for Focal Point, because North Central does have enough equipment apparently in stock to be able to pretty much do this right now without causing a time delay. There would be some couple of cons related to this, and North Central didn't really like this for a couple of reasons. If you notice right here, there's an extra pole that's here right along 305 that you don't see. This is option 1 over here to the right. So you'll note no pole there, and this has a pole here. So you'd have to bring, you know, the power over across overhead 305, and then you'd have some extra pole. It would possibly create a little bit of a time delay for permitting that pole with DOT, because that's in the 305 right away. And then you also have some additional guy wires that you would have over there that could potentially cause some issues with some of the entranceways to these perimeter commercial lots. So again, that would be one of the cons. You have the added pole at the entrance, some of those guy wires. This would require an MDOT permit, and so that could potentially result in a slight time delay.
Mr. Gambone, once it leaves the pole, once the lines leave the pole, they're underground at that point,
Yes.
regardless to what option is chosen, correct?
Yes, sir.
It's buried lines
Yes.
once it leaves these
Yes, sir.
poles. Okay.
This is all you would see. So, you know, the power, if you were to power the building in the background, the power's running back down that pole. You'd see a transformer box set here. It goes underground, and then it comes back up and serves the building. So that would be irrespective, you know, option 1, option 2, that they're buried. All the service lines would be buried.
Thank you.
And then the lines would also be buried again in this town center area that I kind of borrowed the Silo Square picture to show you what that might look like along the main roads right here and here. So that option 2 extends that burial of lines down this road again that would connect with Nail Road entrance down to Fulmer Drive. And then the third option would be to simply require underground across the entire development, and that would be best for aesthetics. The negatives associated with that would be about a $500,000 expense onto Focal Point investment, and that's numbers was given to us from North Central. And North Central also indicated that it would take them about 6 months to order enough of those boxes of materials to be able to have the facilities to bury everything. They don't have all of that on stock. And you would also still have that overhead line to cross over top of 305 to be able to bring the power from the main transmission line to get it underground. So almost any project You have, like we were talking about, bridges at Camp Creek, for example, you have an existing transmission line along Camp Creek Drive, but to get to the power into bridges at Camp Creek, you had to run an overhead line over across Camp Creek itself, and then there was another pole, and then from that point, it's brought underground, and the rest of that development's underground, but you always have at least some overhead power on any project. And then the fourth option that's available would be to table this item till your next meeting, and that would allow us to put this on the agenda for the Planning Commission. You could get their review and counsel on the matter if the board chose to do that, and that would provide some additional time maybe to go back to North Central and say, hey, are there any other alternatives here that might be available other than the options 1 and 2 that were listed? So that would be some of the advantages to do that. And of course, the only disadvantage of doing that is it would be another 2-week delay. So that concludes the staff presentation, Mayor. We do have, I see Mr. Threets here, I see Greg Russell's here, who was the applicant, and David Von Beckman from North Central's here, who may be able to shed more light on the situation from their perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Gambone. Before we go to those individuals, board, any questions on the staff report?
Yeah, Mayor, I have several questions, if I might. The first one, excuse me, Mr. Gambone, can you show me on the map where the main transmission line would come from? I know it's got to be overhead from the west side of 305, but where would that connect on this map to the project?
I think it would be somewhere near the Nail Road entrance, or they would utilize the one that's currently along Fulmer Drive.
Okay, so you would have a transmission pole from the west side of 305 onto the project just
Right.
east of 305.
Right, if you go out there now, you have the transmission line that runs along the west side of 305. There's a big pole, a couple of them that are right in front of the Quick Trip convenience store that's here, although it kind of angles back over more westward. So one of the items that we discussed in the meeting that we had with the developer a couple weeks ago was, could North Central bring the power maybe and bring it in up here? But I think the distance became too great. I believe the North Central representative was stating it was about 600 feet, which wouldn't draw enough power over across. So, it's one of those things North Central might be in a better position to answer that than me. That was my understanding from the meeting.
Okay. If you'll go to option 2 for a minute, please. And this may be a Mr. Russell question in North Central and several other things, but would it be possible to go underground on the north side of the main entrance of Nail, like you're showing on the south side, and then pick up power poles along the back? And we may not have that answer tonight, but I was just curious.
So Alderman Earhart, it basically do away with the first 3 poles on that north side and go to the corner?
Yes, the
Yep.
first 3 or 4,
Yep.
and
Then
have
have-
underground on that north side as well.
And you'd have 0 poles in the very front. Yep.
Correct.
And I think that's where the discussion was about, with that line in front of Quick Trip kind of extending westward, it was hard for them to bring it this far across the road at a more northerly location. But again, that's really
But if your
Mr. Vine.
transmission line is on Fulmer, then you could go underground from Fulmer across the whole face of the project, I would think.
Well, they kind of have the one on Fulmer here, and they have a couple of existing, so I think it's a legitimate question.
Okay. And just for right now, not that we have to be equal to, so to speak, but when we approved this project in 2019, I was very excited to have this quality development olive branch, so I commend Mr. Thweet for bringing it to us. And yet, part of that excitement was the aesthetic value in a high-scale piece of property. And I know there's been a lot of delays and adjusted costs, but how does this compare to Silo and to Tanger Outlet Mall? If my memory serves me right, driving by those, there are no utility poles or power poles in those projects.
Well, at that meeting, we discussed, Silo Square, to use it as a comparison. So in Silo Square, you have transmission lines along both sides of Getwell Road. So all of the projects that are fronting Get Well, they go right down off of those poles and get their power that way. Now, they ran a line along what's called May Boulevard, but it ran from Get Well, and it kind of runs behind the Slim Chickens restaurant that's out there and goes back and then picks up back on May Boulevard and runs all the way back, and it looks like they have another transmission line over on Tullahoma Road. So they do have some overhead power there. Now, we discussed the possibility of bringing it in like at the side. North Central was not open to that idea because they were making the point that if there was a lightning strike or a problem or a car hit one of those poles back behind Slim Chickens, that, you could be, they may not be able to get access and the whole project could be out for a long period of time. So they didn't really like the idea of serving it that particular way.
Okay. And I'm certainly not an electrical engineer, so I'm just curious how that worked, but, okay, thank you. Mayor, that's all I have right now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Earhart. Any other questions from the board? Just focal point, or engineering or North Central would like to add anything? Mr. Russell, how are you doing?
Fantastic. How are y'all doing?
Good, doing good.
Greg Russell, Civil Source, 2696 Dawnwood Circle North, South Haven. First of all, I'm not an electrical engineer, so I'm going to start off with that. But we brought David Von Botman here, and he's obviously with North Central, and he can answer any of the load questions that you may have. And Marian's here, and I'm sure he wants to speak tonight too. Forever, however long I've been here, the condition on every subdivision approval is all the utilities go underground. It's standard, and I've always agreed to it. And then this project comes along, and Jeff Underwood with North Central comes back and says, these poles, this utility line have such a heavy load on them that we want them above ground. And we said, well, they have to be underground. And he really pushed back. He said, with these loads, these lines need to be on poles. One thing, if you could go back to the progress photograph, one thing that was agreed to by Marion and Focal Point was the metal poles and the taller poles to help get that more out of your sight line, and that there wouldn't be any communication utilities. So there's no other utilities hanging on there. And that's what you have on progress. When you see the pole, you really can't see the line. And everything is compared to silo, but as Jason stated, that the silo is all service off of the front, off of Getwell. They don't have that interior street, so to speak. They can reach everything. And as Jeff explained to it, their electrical load is much lighter than what Cascades is going to be. And again, he reiterated, we want them overhead. Then the other thing that you don't see on silo is they have a main line that's going back to Tullahoma, but they put it on the backs of the lots. So you've got a line running down the back of residential lots. Excuse me. And he said absolutely they would not do that. And that's because if something were to happen to one of those poles, let's say lightning struck it or something like that, and electricity goes out, well, they're going to be in somebody's backyard trying to fix that. They're going to have one of those big heavy trucks. They're going to rut up the yard. They're going to tear down the fences, and there's no telling how long it's going to take. So North Central puts everything out on the front so that it's accessible and that they can get to it. And the reason for the loop has a similar reason too, and that is it's kind of like a water line. That's what I know as a water line. We loop water lines because if you have a break, you can feed it from one side or the other while you're fixing whatever the failure part is. There's also been a lot of discussion over the years about whether you actually see these overhead lights, or overhead power lines or not. And you say, yes, you do, but we've actually looked at projects and surveyed people as they come out of these subdivisions and say, well, you know, if you don't mind me asking, was the power overhead or underground? And the majority of the people can't answer that because we've just been trained not to see it, so to speak. Let me flip over here. So the other thing that the other problem that, or the other issue that this site has that other sites don't have is we have the huge drainage swale ditch in front of the site, and so North Central is reluctant to cross that. First off, they'd have to cross it where a lot is, and again, they don't want to be on a lot line, they want to be out on the street, but then they also have to have the ditch there would have to serve it from the other side of 305, which makes the run too long. So they would have to have a pole, an intermediate pole there that they don't have a place for. Everything else that you see on the site, other than where the pink dots are, the purple dots are, will all be underground. So from that point on, when you get into the main town center, similar to the picture that you're looking there of Silo, that's what you'll see because everything will be underground. As I understand, and David can answer this, as I understand, the $500,000 extra and the 6 months extra would be for option 2. That would be for that one section south of the entrance, would be that $500,000 in 6 months. If we went, Mr. Gill, your suggestion along that whole frontage, it's going to be more dollars and a longer wait. They just, as Jeff explained, they don't have the materials on site to run this size load underground. That's all I have. If you have any questions for me, I'm sure Maureen would like to speak, and
Mr.
David
Von
will come
Bachman.
up and
If no questions for Mr. Russell, maybe Mr. Von Bachman could come up as well. I know I at least have couple technical questions. You're welcome to remain with him. Any questions for Mr. Russell? I just wanted to get to the engineer, the brains behind the matter. The engineers are always smart, right, Andy? But I'm just curious if you heard Mr. Earhart's question, Mr. Von Bachman, about the Plan 2, and could it cross from 305, I guess, from Quick Trip and meet at that corner?
Yeah.
Then do away with the poles up front? Could it think it could do that?
I think it had been looked at that at one time, was a possibility of doing that, but what we're going to be looking at coming through, of course, is all the drainage that comes through there, as well as a different permit, special permit from the MDOT to be able to cross under. I'm assuming, I think I understood that you're talking about crossing from the Quick Trip side to the east side of 305. And like I said, as far as the loading, I think that we have some of the equipment, maybe of the material, like the wire, some has come in, but not enough. And it's been a real lag on the material getting that for some reason. But we would look at getting a large enough size wire, not our normal conductor, that we would have to put under that encasement, like I said, and get it all from the approval from MDOT to go into the ground in the first place. And so that's why the option 2 with poles was there, because that would be a more immediate possible option. As far as getting in there, you still have the MDOT permit. It's just a different type permit for the underground. And like I said, I think there's still going to be some switchgear issue that we had waited on. I'm not 100% sure whether we've received that switchgear. I think we're still waiting on it. And it's a larger type of switchgear equipment that's made for the larger load and the large conductors. And so it had some delay on getting that material as well. And so that's why we're looking at trying to go ahead and looking at overhead design to get the option to get it on in there. The option two looked like it had, to me, I think the downside of that, what we were looking at as far as the overhead coming in, was the fact that you're going to have the two poles right there at the entrance, and the second pole into it right there is going to have anchors a couple of different directions there. It'd be coming back straight into the development, and then also going back towards the entranceway with that pole to support the line going back to the north there. So that's why the option one seemed better aesthetics, I guess, was because the anchors on it would be more, the two poles on either side, the anchors would be down the property lines, facing on either side instead of facing towards the fountain and the roundabout. That's why we looked at option one there.
I always hate to compare to other cities, but why would this require a higher power load than Silo Square?
I'm not particularly familiar with Silo Square's load. Generally, when you like my understanding from it was tapping off of, like, say, Getwell Road, and you tap off and you feed a Slim Chicken, or you tap off and you feed a couple of places. We can do that too, as far as tap off and feed two customers. But when you tap off wherever we come off Fulmer Road and come up to the north,
Okay.
that line there is going to support everything in that whole development, not just two businesses or three businesses, something like that. And so that's why the load's greater. Like I said, they're getting their services off of Getwell, my understanding. So when you're able to come off, feed two or three or four, or go in the rear lot line, then you won't necessarily have to have the large conductors and the larger load, because it's going to be individual or two or three
Thank you.
businesses.
Board, any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. The pole we're looking at looks like it's metal.
Yes, sir.
Is it like tin looking?
It's steel. Yes, sir.
Can they come in different colors?
No, sir, we don't do those. We do the galvanized, and what it does is it's not bright. It's kind of a dull steel color, but we have them in that one color only. We don't have any different colored ones.
But you could get them? Is that what I'm understanding or not?
I wouldn't promise that. I mean, I've seen other utilities, MLGW gets some of their stuff that way, but that's not anything that we've looked at or would like to look at. We'd rather not.
Yeah, I mean, when we approved this, we was approving it with it all underground.
I understand.
And the statistics like Ms. Earhart was talking about. I was just trying to think of if you could dress up the poles better, like street lights. I mean, I think the blacks look better.
Matte black or something.
Yeah, black like that, but you don't think you can get those, or they don't make them?
I'm sure anybody can get out there and paint them, but I'm not sure that there's anything we can get from the manufacturer. I'll put it that way.
We've had some bad experiences painting them. Had with Mr. Riker, they end up needing to be repainted 2 years later.
On the fiberglass ones that you were discussing, the flat black or the shiny black, on the lights that we have, we do have to go back and repaint those too. They don't stay that nice pretty black that they were when we first put them in. We do have to come back and have repainted those in different subdivisions. Yes, sir.
So when you get further away and if you take the poles that wrap around the buildings, the development, so to speak,
Yes, sir.
I think, what is it called, load drain, as you run things from further away you get away from the generating source, you have load drain.
Yeah.
So this way you keep it coming in, the way you keep a circular motion, the way the power can run either way and then run. That way, if you do have load drain, it can pull from the other side as well.
That's correct. Well, yes, sir, that's correct. What we have is we call it a loop design. And like in option one, you know how it goes all the way completely around, ties into Fulmer and comes off of Fulmer. And so if the poles are hit anywhere in there, let's say, we'd be able to open it up at one point and then feed it back in the other direction, as long as everything's tied together. you know, somewhere along the line, maybe on the top, where it slants back down, in front of those rows, it could be, put a set of switches there on the
Those
pole,
little low
leave
switches
those
keep it
open,
from going
both
past.
sides are feeding it, and then you
Okay.
can feed it from either direction then. Yes, sir.
That keeps the load switch from here, and then if you do have it, you can shut off and pick up back down here.
That's correct.
Okay.
So again, for my clarification, there's gonna be an overhead transmission line possibly by Nail Road over the highway connecting into the roundabout and the development?
On the option 2,
Well, actually, option one now, I guess. I'm back on option one for a minute. So the main source of power from the transmission line will come from the west side of 305,
that's right.
overhead to the project or underground?
Okay. Now, my understanding and thought on this was that we're gonna use the existing overhead line on Fulmer
Okay,
and tie into that all the way back, to the north, off
Okay.
of those existing
'Cause I-
poles onto the new poles.
I do like Fulmer. To me, that's just kind of down already on that street out of the way, so, okay, so you can use that overhead line there.
That's correct. Now, you know, like I said, the Nail Road, I think the option was there to come across, but I'd just soon use the Fulmer existing poles there.
Okay, and let me ask you this, going back to option two then.
Yes,
If
sir.
that's the case, where you come in on Fulmer, why is it, again, we can't run underground north across the front of the development to the north corner and then maybe loop in the back?
Yes. What we'd be looking at on the option 2, and you, coming off of the Fulmer, it shows, I think, the new pole down there in the red.
Right,
If you come back north, you're gonna be feeding the lots that are there between, the Fulmer and the, main entrance to the north there. That's the only ones that'd be fed underground off of that, which is, about 5 lots or 5 businesses. So we'd be able to use our normal type conductor for that, but we wouldn't be able to feed the whole thing off of that.
right, but can you not continue underground under that roundabout as you come in the main entrance and go up the first 3 lots to that corner right there that Mr. Gambone just said, underground?
I'm sorry, tell me that again, because I'm not
Right,
understanding.
you see the roundabout,
Yes,
and you got the 2 pink dots right there on the entrance. Can we not go underground from the blue dot and continue north underground to that corner, that furthermost northern corner?
okay. Yeah, just keep all that underground?
Right,
Again, like I said, I'm sorry. Again, the problem with that would be the cable size and the equipment size that we have. We don't currently have anywhere else this type of equipment.
Right.
So, like I said, we're trying to order it and look for doing that, but the conductor that we have now is not large enough to carry that
okay.
between
But
the two.
it can be done, it just costs more and will delay more, is that,
Yes, delay
Okay.
more and cost more.
okay? That's-
The 2 guys that you mentioned at the entrance,
Yes, sir.
that's 2 accidents waiting to happen.
Yeah.
Those guy wires constantly getting hit. I've had enough experience to know that those are things that's gonna be a problem with 2 guy wires right at the main entrance. 'Cause either one of those will hit was gonna probably tear down some wires.
That's correct.
With that load and heavy load on, and that much wiring on it, when that guy wire's gone, the pole's probably gonna snap and everything's gonna be on the ground.
Yeah, they will break, if you get hit. And, you know, there may be, I'm not 100% on if there's entrance signs or something there that may be able to block that or protect those, but, of course, there's always bollards, those look real pretty too, sticking up there. But, you know, you can put some bollards or something like that to possibly protect it, but that's more stuff out there in the way. So,
Mr. Von Bachman, one of the options that Planning Department recommends is tabling this for the Planning Commission to look for more options. I mean, I know they're good at what they do, but I also know y'all are the subject matter experts as North Central. Y'all are the electrical experts. Are there other options that you don't see here that you think would work? I would look to North Central for those probably before the Planning Commission.
okay.
Do you see any other options that are not on the table?
Yes, sir. We had looked at it and designed, and like I said, the option 1 was the one we felt like would do the best as far as keeping things out of the way. And as Greg pointed out, and I'm not trying to be ugly, we call them distribution lines and distribution poles instead of transmission, because people get the idea of transmission poles, it's the ones that are, 10 feet in diameter instead of the ones like ours that are 18 inches. But I went completely blank. I knew I shouldn't have done that. We picked option one, like I said, because we felt like it would give the developer an option as far as the lines, as far as the aesthetics from 305. They'll be behind the businesses that are along the lots there. They'll be on the interior of the development, but like I said, give us enough room. And with the taller poles, 50-foot poles, and steel poles, they do tend to kind of disappear into the vision. So, they will be there, but they're of course people plant bushes and everything else around everything. But after a while, they blend in and tend to, if you have a more rural subdivision and we have overhead lines, say Brayborn, the wood poles tend to go away when you got trees and everything else around it, and the area is more rural. In a more urban type setting, the steel ones tend to disappear just as easily. But like I said, we did the option one because we felt like that would be the least noticeable as far as the entrance way coming in. It'd be have the two poles set to either side out of the entrance, instead of having up the driveway to the entrance.
I got a question. How long have y'all been proposed with this? Did y'all just come up with this? I mean, electrical stuff, because they've been building on it for a long time.
Yes, sir.
And the plans have been out there.
Yes, sir.
And now we're just hearing it now about this. I just wondered, did y'all not know you'd have to order things and stuff like that? Or y'all just didn't know, y'all waiting for us to change our,
Not a bit,
I'm just trying to figure this out.
I understand,
At worst, I like what Gil proposed, eliminating those two poles, the 3 poles right there at the front and just having it circle on the back. But, just all of a sudden come up here and say, well, we can't get the material, we'd have to order, it sounded like y'all just notified about this.
Well, and I understand. When we first got the plans,
Yeah.
probably that week, we already went ahead and laid out what we thought it needed. And that's just what we thought it could do underground. Then we worked with the developer to see what we can do and can't do as far as dollar-wise, because what we do on the overhead is generally the overhead facilities we design and build without extra cost to the developer. Underground is a cost difference.
Yeah, I
And so
probably
when
should be talking to the developer more than you. But, this was gonna be a special place.
Yes.
It's one we approved it and all that.
Yes.
And it's just becoming, it looks like a little less, special, the more changes we make to it.
Well, I just wanted to
And
clarify.
so I'm not
that-
really
I just wanted to
blaming
clarify,
you.
we did.
I was just wondering how long you've known this and stuff.
Well, like I said, when we get,
I'm not trying to, the developer had to know it was gonna cost more being underground, always is. Always, every developer comes in here, gripes at us for putting it underground.
that would probably be one of their questions, I guess. Like I said, ours, as far as we went, we started from the beginning with the.
And I understand from your side, y'all like it above, everything above ground.
Well,
But,
I like it underground too, but that's,
yeah, I understand that.
But, with the, like I said, we're trying to look at the reliability as far as this with the overhead and to be able to get the line back on, the electricity back on to whoever the customer is
And-
as quickly as possible. With the underground, like I said, it was equipment we didn't have that was gonna be at a cost to other people that, that we needed them to come up with. That'd be a developer question, I guess.
Okay, but y'all could probably do anything we suggested, right?
Yes, sir, like I said, it's a matter of time, material, and money.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Von Bachman. Mr.
Yep.
Three, anything to add, sir, as the developer?
Absolutely. How's everyone doing today? So we met, to answer your question, Mr. Collins, so we met with North Central because when we were getting ready to do the infrastructure inside, we met with Jeff Underwood. And so when Jeff came, he said, look, guys, we have a problem. I'm like, well, what's that? 'Cause I'm like you, I want to go underground, you know, and I want to.
I'm not trying to spend all your money.
No, it's fine, it's
I know
fine.
you've already spent a lot of it.
Ah, Lord, yeah, I know, right? And so what happened, I was like, okay, what's the problem? He said, well, if you go underground at the front of it, then what happens, you know, we don't have a big enough wire to loop it around, you know, and feed the whole entire, 'cause there's so much power to be pulled, you know, for the project. And so I said, okay, well then what are our options? And he said, well, the best option would be, you know, to loop it, like he was referring to like option 1. And so I was like, man, I didn't really, you know, I said, well, send me your poll, send me what it would look like and how we can, you know, work through it. And so while they were doing it, I went to Silo, and you know, you probably don't even notice it, but Silo has a lot of lines, a lot of poles in front of it. People don't even realize the number. It's massive, and so they do have it's not a loop around what they do. It kind of like stops at the back. And when Jeff saw that, he said, well, we wouldn't do that at North Central because you can't get to it. So the problem is if one of those poles get damaged, then then everyone loses, you know, power for, you know, the infinite amount of time, as opposed to if we loop it and something were to happen, then we come back in and then we can repair it quickly. Well, I said, well, you know, so that made sense. I said, what can we do to minimize the visibility of the pole? And so he said, okay, well, we can make it. And I said, can you paint it? I like him, like, can we paint it? The problem with the painting is galvanized, and so it will flake off. And so you'll always be trying to fix it, you'll always be trying to go back. He said, but you won't even see it because it'll be 50 feet, you have buildings in front of it. So basically you have buildings, it's kind of a hill anyway, so you have buildings that actually face 305. So it'll be on the back side of those buildings. And you wouldn't even notice it. And then on Farmer, what they were going to do is take those wood poles out and replace them with metal poling. I didn't like number 2 because they were going to, well, first of all, you got to go through MDOT, and that's the first thing. And the second thing is they were going to run it across 305. So you're going to run a line across 305 to a pole, to a different pole, and have anchors right in front of in front of everything where everybody can see it. And it didn't make a lot of sense to me, so I was thinking, well, you know, if we can minimize it by putting it behind the buildings where people can't see it and it's easily accessible and provide the power, I mean, it does everything that it needs to do, then I'm thinking, okay, then let's go that route. But I did ask a question about could we paint it? And then as you look, even over here at Tractor Supply, you can tell, like, it's just hard to get that much power to these properties. And I just saw all of the down, it's just a lot of issues that we didn't have to even deal with. And so, and I don't think you can loop an underground. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you can't really, so the underground part, when you get there, you can't loop it. So you have to run a line across the expressway. So you're still gonna have power lines that are super visible because you'll see it on 305, you got the line, you got poles, as opposed to having them behind the buildings on the main drag, just, you know, as far as that loop is concerned. And then everything interior would just be underground because, you know, then it'd be more like Silo. Because now you can pull from those poles to the buildings. But Silo does have overhead power. People just don't know it. But inside, like we're asking, it would be all underground, which would be more in line with what they have.
Well, me personally, though, I'm like Mr. Dickerson around that roundabout. I don't like those 2 poles.
Yeah.
That's just the entrance of your whole thing is right there. And it changes the aesthetics of it.
The 2 poles are gonna be, to me, worse aesthetics than what got in option 1, and especially with the guy wires. The guy wires are very noticeable. Because most of the time, they've got some kind of yellow plastic around them so that they're visible to anybody going by. So you're gonna not only just have the wires come down, you're gonna have the plastic sheathing around those wires coming down that's right in your vision every time you go in and out. And if you don't have those poles, with these two poles, the other ones won't have the guy wires. And we've got to have we've got to make sure we got redundancy in this project. We cannot have a project this big that we could have some kind of electrical failure that would knock everybody out. They need to be able to go in there and switch that feed and put as many people back to work as they can, as quick as they can. And I don't know that in a buried scenarios are never quick repairs, never. The aerial are much faster and they're easy to get to, but when you have to start digging up something and try to fix something, you're talking hours longer in the restoration process.
Absolutely. I did my homework on it, and I looked at it, and you're right, Mr. Dickerson. I mean, it's like Jeff Underwood was saying, it'll take forever to get these things back up there if there's a problem. And so I was resistant at first, but then as I went, we did more homework, you know, I determined that option A would be the very best one for everybody and for the project itself. So I want it to look good too. And we're trying to get started. We're trying to get moving. You know, we're moving meeting with MDOT, and so we got things situated. And I didn't want to wait another 6 months. You know, so we're trying to get. We have everything lined up. This is the last thing that I need to take care of. You know, so before we can get it finished. So,
Mr. Threed, I'm probably asking the same thing that Alderman Earhart.
You can ask me more than one time. That's
So
fine.
if you did come across Fulmer, come across 305 above ground, overhead at Fulmer, and went counterclockwise this way, and then straight across the front on the north, that part buried, did you look at that? Coming
Well, we
this way,
looked at
going
that,
down
but
Fulmer, and doing away with really both of those poles at the entrance. Will that
Yes.
not work?
Yes,
don't-
Mayor. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, for me, I don't like option 2 as it is now, for 2 reasons. Number one, it looks like it's just thrown together. I want consistency. Either you do a full loop or you do all underground, one of the two, in my opinion. And I agree with Alderman Dickerson, if you got a couple of poles at the roundabout, you're just asking for trouble.
Yep.
So, Mayor, basically what I was suggesting, and get to that later from a discussion standpoint, but to me it makes most sense, if we go down Fulmer, have your delivery line there and go all underground across the face, or just do loop. One of those two makes the most sense, and I think that's probably TBD.
Well, we actually discussed that, and the problem with that is there wasn't enough power. The lines aren't, so the underground wouldn't be big enough to power the entire. There's a lot of power that's gonna go to that place, so they didn't have a what do you call it, cables? It wasn't big enough to actually. I understand what you're saying, and I actually presented this to him, Jeff Underwood. And he said there's just not big enough a line to go around. It'd be the same issue then if you have an outage, then everything will be out. So.
But I'm only talking about the front side of the project.
The front side.
I'm not talking about the entire loop underground.
Well, so the loop, so the overhead, and I may be wrong about this, so maybe you can be, but the overhead creates the loop. If you have underground, the loop stops, and then you have to restart it. Is that correct?
No, we can tie the underground into a loop as well.
You can't do.
The thing that, on top about is you still have to have a larger cable and underground equipment to go from pole all the way to that top pole.
Yes. It can be done, and it can still loop in. It's just a matter of cost and time of getting the product at this point. But you can still run a loop having some underground and some above ground. Okay.
See, off pole, going north like that, it should be able to, at some point, if you want to, and then tie back in with the overhead loop, you can do that. But like I said, you're looking at extra time, extra equipment.
Okay.
Mr. Swims, this is one of your areas of expertise as well as Mr. Russell. Do you see anything that we're missing? I mean, they powered AXI facility in Memphis. I don't know how many kilowatts went underground for that, but
Right.
what do you see that we could be thinking about?
Well, I think David has kind of explained it well. I think we've got to, look and see what North Central can do. If they've got an option there for everything to be underground, I think it may require us to do a little bit more study and working with them to see what what compromises we might be able to make to help try to eliminate some of this aesthetic issues that we have, especially at the roundabout. So I think it would be worth taking a look at that and see how that impacts the project. I think it would be important to, especially if we do allow some of these poles, that we get clear on the pole heights, and we get clear that there's nothing gonna be on those poles except the actual transmission line, the three-phase, and I think that was mentioned, but I don't know exactly how we work that out, but I think that does make a difference as well. So that's my only
Well,
comment.
thank you. Mr. Threed, how bad if the board decides to table for 2 weeks, I know you're ready to go, how bad of a position does that put you in?
You know, I mean, it's fine. I mean, I think, you know, you guys will make the right decision. I just think that option one, you know, based on everything that we talked about was our best option. I think even we went underline, and correct me if I'm wrong, you would still have to go across, you would still have to bring a line across the north side, on the back side of the property, and he did not want to do, hey, Greg, he wanted to bring a line across the front, so basically if you do underground across the front, you have to bring a line across to loop it around, correct?
I didn't hear that.
Excuse me?
You talking about Mr. Underwood?
Right, no, well, I'm asking, I think that, and maybe he can answer this question for us, but, you know, the loop around was just simple, you know, it would make a lot of sense, people wouldn't even see it. You could probably do underground, but they were saying they didn't have it would take 6 months to get
Extra cabling and boxes to.
Right, and I was looking at moving a bit faster than that, because I can't, you know,
And
I
Maureen,
mean-
can I ask you one question in conjunction to that? Jason,
Sure.
can we go back to whoever's got option one again, or two, or one at work? The lots, the out parcels you have that border 305, did I hear you mention that the front of the building's gonna be facing the highway?
no, it's gonna be, no, I was saying that the
Front-
building.
Okay, that's what I would think. I just thought I heard you say the front was gonna be facing the highway.
Right, so.
Which
yeah.
means everybody on the inside is looking at the back of a building and a transit.
no.
Okay.
No, it won't be, but like I said, the building, so you're looking at another 20 feet, then you got the building itself, and then, like I said, on the opposite side of the road, what road, is where you would have. Yeah, right. I don't know the name of the road, but it'll be on the opposite side of it, out of the way, and that's why, you know, that's why we want to go that route. What do you think?
Well,
Greg, can you tell me,
I understand what you're saying, because I'm talking with David, because Andy mentioned the compromise, and what I was asking David was, what if we put the poles north and south, and then just ran it underground at the entrance? And so those poles are not at the roundabout. And so, in other words, just take out these two poles.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say, or take these two poles and, yeah, those two, and then run it underground just there to clean that up.
Where are the poles end at, there's gonna be anchors coming down the road. So if they end at next to the lot next to the entrance, there's gonna be an anchor where it's backing up the strength off that open one. So it'd be out into the lot.
I don't know if it's feasible or not, but that's what I was asking David, that's all.
how long has North Central been designing this with y'all? For months, 2 months, 3 months?
We looked at the original design when it first got the first plat, and it had been looking at different ways to do it ever since then. Like we're trying to work with developers, trying to work with, trying to figure out what kind of load equipment we needed, and we came up with that pretty quick, and then it had to be, we got twice together a month ago.
The
It's
reason I asked that, I don't know that if we sent this back to the planning commission, after all this discussion has been going on with them, they're gonna come up with some miracle plan in 2 weeks? I don't think so. I think if they had anything that, better than these options here, that would've been included in our discussion to start with, but in 2 weeks, they're not gonna come up with some magic plan that says, we've solved all y'all's issues. I don't believe that's gonna happen. So
Maybe not.
I think we need to make a decision tonight, which one we're gonna do.
The only thing is, Board, we've had two different plans suggested tonight that wasn't one of these, one or two. Mr. Dye, instead of going back to the Planning Commission, can North Central and Mr. Threet and Mr. Swims bring us some alternate plans, since they're the experts, instead of going back to the PC?
Absolutely. Going to the planning commission is not required. What's actually before the board is an application to amend the conditions of preliminary plat approval. And so the board could table this for 2 weeks and direct planning, engineering to work with the developer's representative with North Central, and to come back with something. What I would call, what Alderman Earhart has proposed tonight is almost a modified option 2, in a sense. And so I think Mr. Russell suggested something along the lines that was slightly different from what Alderman Earhart suggested. That's the mayor's point, I think, is that there's been other options presented in addition to these 4 tonight. But Mayor, to answer your question, there's no requirement that this go to the planning commission. It's the board's condition of approval that's being modified, and that the Board of Aldermen has the jurisdiction to modify that board order.
Very good.
Can North Central and y'all come up with a plan in 2 weeks that does all this that we're asking?
I felt like we're trying to come up with option 1, which was the option to try to clear it up as best as possible and have it as not as visible as visible as possible, spanning over the entrance instead of just option coming around and making the curve of the pole. And like I said, I felt like that's probably our best option at this point. But like I said, that's my understanding where we're at. Option 1 was best, and then option 2, something we could possibly work around.
So just some backdrop. I mean, we had extensive talks with North Central and Jeff Underwood about it, and I mean, I promise all the questions you guys asked, I have asked, and I'm like, okay, so what's the best thing that we can do to make this happen without having the least amount of issues? And that's why they presented option 1 to me, and I was like, I don't want to do that one. I want to do something different. But then as they went across all the cons to going with the rest of it, I'm like, okay, well, option 1 just made more sense. And so I know we can make things really, really complicated, but I have really, really tried to put forth our best effort to make sure that we did something that made sense for the city and the project itself. And so, I mean, nobody would know it's a line. I know we're discussing it right now, but you probably wouldn't even know it's a line. Because you wouldn't, if you drive down Gateway and you see Silo, you'll see what I'm saying. There's so many lines everywhere. It's astonishing, but probably never seen them before. Because I actually drove over there and did a little tour. I went to a few more places too, but I mean, if we can get North Central to try to see can they accommodate what you're asking, and have Jeff I think because Jeff, he was more into it. He couldn't be here tonight. He was the one that was like really overseeing the design, and if I can see if he can modify it, and like you just suggested, Alderman Earhart, but
Well, Mayor, what I'd be willing to do at the appropriate time in the next little bit, I have a suggestion, an idea, and I'd be willing to put that in form of a motion when the discussion out. But I think we're kind of drawing to where we could do that.
Gotcha. Well, I will say, Mr. Threet, it's the first time I've seen Mr. Jeff Underwood send anything in writing about it going overhead. He's usually 100% just the opposite. In the 4 years I've been here, he would never wanted to go overhead. Never, never, never. So it's got to be a reason that he's put that in writing.
he was adamant about it. Yes, sir. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Any other questions? Motion?
Mayor, then what I'd be willing to tender is this. I would make a motion, because what I would like to see is, again, consistency. So my motion is that we table it to the 15th to allow our staff and North Central to come back with the best of 2 options. Number 1 would be option 1 that they've designed, and number 2 would be to run underground across the entire face of the project to that farthest northern corner. And that way we have consistency of 2 designs, and either they'll both work or one will work better, but I'd like to hear from our staff at North Central to see if they can come up with one of those two options
Gotcha.
to best suit us.
Thank you, Mr. Earhart. Motion before the board. Is there a second?
I wouldn't disagree with you, in the fact that it's been, they've had it since it was a flat, and this is where it's come down, but I don't know if 2 weeks is gonna change that. This is not too soon.
I second it, the table it 2 weeks.
Got a motion and a second to table it 2 weeks for the two plans that Alderman Earhart mentioned. Motion and second. Any board discussion?
I don't mind tabling it for 2 weeks. I don't have any hope that we're gonna have a better plan than what we've got tonight. I don't, if they could have done this, I think this would have been included in option 2 when they designed option 2 to bring it to us.
Yeah, I
I
don't
can't
disagree.
imagine they would have overlooked something so obvious that.
I don't disagree with you, but we approved the plan with it all underground, and now we've been surprised, this. So I think we should look at it.
Well, I don't mind looking at it, but this is not the first time this has happened.
But
We
Mr.
did
Von
Tractor
Braun just-
Supply and he
he's-
had the exact same
He
scenario.
did say it was technically possible to do it, it's just gonna cost more money and get supplies.
Well, that's true, but I don't think, at least I wouldn't be in support of him saying, let's make it all buried, 6-month delay and $500,000 cost. I wouldn't be at all in favor of that, just to keep it buried.
Any more discussion? Been a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Table for 2 weeks until 4/15. 4/15 for that plan. And Mr. Swims, will you coordinate meeting with North Central and Mr. Threet? Mr. Russell, thank you. New business items, number 1, consideration of recommendation to approve change order number CO2-25 on contract with Riverside Traffic Systems in the deductive amount of $35,082.07, making the new contract amount $609,151.59 for the project referred to as term bid contract for annual striping and pavement markings. Anything to add, Mr. Swims?
Yes, sir. This is mainly due to, trying to not we're actually going to be doing some of the temporary striping on the pavement preservation. So we had that in both contracts. We're taking it out of this one, and so that's the reason for the deduction. So we're just requesting that this be approved for this deduction. It'll actually be a part of another contract for the most part.
Thank you. Any questions? Deductive is always a good thing.
That's right.
No questions, any motions?
Motion approved.
Mr. Collins, motion to approve. Second. Second, Ms. Pat Hamilton. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item 2, consideration of recommendation to approve final change order number CO2-25 on the contract with Lehman Roberts Company in the deductive amount of $554,880, making the new contract amount $918,244 for the project referred to as term bid contract for annual surface treatment. Mr. Swims?
Yes, sir. This is a fairly substantial deduction that we're having in the contract. But as these projects have progressed, we kind of knew this was coming along. This is what has happened after we've done some field measurements. But as we knew some of this money was going to become available, we're probably looking at our overall budget for both overlays and pavement preservation. We'll probably still balance out. So we're still seeing, but this is going to be money that we will be getting back on this contract. So we do recommend this be approved. Be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions or motions?
Motion to approve.
Mr. Wallace, motion. Is there a second? Ms. Aldridge, second. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Third item is consideration of recommendation to approve Craft Road widening agreement with DeSoto County. Board Supervisor Jesse Medlin came to me maybe a month or so ago and talked about partnering together as city and county to widen Craft Road. As you know, it's currently 5 lanes from 302 to Church Road, and the proposal is to 5-lane it from Church Road to just south of College Road, where it would taper back in. It would give 5 lanes. This is about estimated to be $4.5 million project, and the county's offering to pay $2 million, and the city would pay the other $2.5 million for what would be considered as a great improvement in that area for school traffic, et cetera. And if you think about Craft Road, once you get to College Road, it's not much further to Bethel Road, and that's maybe a little over a mile or at a mile, and at some point maybe that's going to be 5-laned, and then you'd have Craft Road 5-laned from 302 all the way to I-269, which would be a great north-south artery, and part of this is definitely needed, and part of it's out of the state not moving on Highway 305, so Mr. Medlin and I wanted to do something. The Board of Supervisors has agreed to partner with us, and now it's before you to see if you're in agreement to do the same.
And we're gonna be responsible for the overruns.
Right. And we're gonna manage the project and put the bids out. But the part that the county's partnered with us on is 100% in the city of Olive Branch.
Okay.
It's not in the county, it's all our jurisdiction.
I'm gonna make a motion to approve. Thank you, Mr. County, working on it.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Motion to approve by Mr. Wallace. Is there a second? Second, Mr. Collins. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion? Leave an executive session? Is there a motion to leave regular session with intentions of going into executive session to discuss the items listed?
So moved.
Mr. Earhart, motion. Second, Ms. Aldridge, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Is there a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel matter in the dispatch department, personnel matters in the fire department, personnel matters in the gas maintenance department, personnel matters in the police department, personnel matters in the street department, personnel matter in the water maintenance department, and potential pending litigation discussion with City Attorney Honorable Brian Dye. Is there a motion to go in executive session for those 7 items?
So moved.
Mr. Collins, motion.
Second.
Second, Mr. Earhart, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. We are in executive session.